القربى واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل كي لا يكون دولة بين الأغنياء منكم وما آتاكم الرسول فخذوه وما نهاكم عنه فانتهوا واتقوا الله إن الله شديد العقاب. للفقراء المهاجرين الذين أخرجوا من ديارهم وأموالهم يبتغون فضلا من الله ورضوانا وينصرون الله ورسوله أولئك هم الصادقون. والذين تبوأوا الدار والإيمان من قبلهم يحبون من هاجر إليهم ولا يجدون في صدورهم حاجة مما أوتوا ويؤثرون على أنفسهم ولو كان بهم خصاصة ومن يوق شح نفسه فأولئك هم المفلحون. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. الفاتحة مع الصلوات.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Alaikum assalam. Inshallah, everybody else is doing well tonight. Whenever you see me up here in the stage, then you know there's one thing, which is something went wrong. We couldn't find the scholar, speaker. So tonight, here I am yet again as a tayammum. Yes, just as a reminder for everybody that didn't already know, the guest speaker that was supposed to come up here tonight was Allison. We're not trying to rug pull you. She couldn't come because she was sick and she wasn't feeling well, and so she wasn't able to come. But anyhow, we didn't want to stop the whole program because it's a very important night. So they decided to contact me as a person of substitute person, a tayammum, if you will. So here I am at your service. Inshallah, I'm going to keep this brief, not because we're under any time pressure, but because I'm not very well versed in this field, so there's not too much for me to add. But alhamdulillah, we do have a scholar here, Sheikh Salim Yusufali, who has kindly agreed to do a quick conclusion at the end, inshallah. Bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala. So this is a sign that the sisters are talking too loud. So if everybody can please be quiet, that way the mic volume can go up. So the more you talk in the crowd, the worse the volume gets. Bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Okay, welcome to the Quds Day 2022. I'm going to start by playing a video of Brother Ali Muaddil, who came here a few years ago. Very good brother that unfortunately passed away. And inshallah, I'm going to start with playing his poem about Palestine.
Once upon a time, in a little land, there lived a little girl who had a little lamb. Her name was Maryam. Maryam had a little lamb. You see, its fleece was as black as the ashes strung by the choppers and bombs, dropped from the planes and helicopter crashes, remains of the tanks and the shells, places you could tell had been burned and blasted. A urine so drastic, her place of birth had been ravaged a really long time ago by savages, a great bloody massacre. Her mom died giving birth to her brother. She lived with grandpa and grandmother. And everywhere that little Maryam were to go, her little lamb would be sure to follow. But see, there were no schools to go to, only tall walls and checkpoints to go through, and you could feel the fear that would reel a tear. But in their life, there was nowhere to steer. She walked in her plane with her little lamb. She looked in the distance. She kicked up a little sand. See, she knew to stay away from the sniper towers, knew the gunshot from a rifle's power in a box full of lead. But one of her friends got too close to the edge and got shot in the head, but that's what it is. Snake-like towering walls surrounded them, causing insurmountable obstacles. Checkpoints cutting off the access to schools and hospitals. They couldn't get passage. The route's impossible, breathing toxic gases, rooting out their chronicles. Open-air prison, but still way harder to live in. Their water shut off from this frightful landfill. Second-class citizen, the world cut off. Time would stand still when the bombs would drop. White phosphorus gases would invade their lungs. Children suffocating, mothers screaming out in their native tongues. Their lives destroyed, devoid of all benefits. Avoid the settlements, got nothing to live for, nothing to cry for, nothing to die for. And so they live for the hell of it. Wealth's irrelevant, got no medicine. Grandpa is sick. Welcome to the Gaza Strip. Flashback to the year 48, the birthday of that wicked state, way back when her dad was alive and little Maryam had just turned 5. She remembered everything so clearly. The way she clutched her teddy bear so dearly and how she looked through the window. The neighbors watching, the soldiers marching through the streets of their town. Synchronous footsteps were the beats and the sounds. Next thing she knew, they're kicking people out of this feeble town, not so eager now. They acted as if they had came from a throne. Pack up your bags, for now we claim your homes. Armed with bulldozers and weapons, and a will to be lethal is what her father reckoned. She never forgot the last words that he said. Yalla ya Maryam, hide under the bed. But Maryam just stood there, frozen with fear. Her father thought fast with a mind so clear. He knew what was coming. He knew there was no point in running. He scooped up his daughter, he shoved her down under the bed, and then he pushed her father. He ran to the door, the knocking sounds just kept getting louder. His hand reached out just to calm the sounds, but before he had the chance, they had knocked it down. He begged and he pleaded, the soldiers beat him down, they wouldn't listen to reason. The pistol shined bright in the hand of their leader. He cocked it with a scowl. Baba opened his mouth, but no words came out. They stole his home, they stomped on his face, and they broke his bones. Horrifying acts that would erode his soul. What's he hoping for? His blood ran fast like a raging river. Merciless soldiers with amazing rigor. Shocked into fear, Maryam's gaze got bigger. He laughed as he drained the trigger.
Please recite salawat for marhum Ali Muaddal, who passed away back in, I believe, 2013-ish. But Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad salawat, and also recite Surah Fatiha for his soul, inshallah. Okay, so tonight's agenda is going to be very brief, inshallah. As I mentioned, originally we were supposed to have Allison come and give us a presentation here, but this is more of a substitute. We're just going to quickly go over the history and the purpose of Quds Day, and then just cover some of the current affairs that's happening in Palestine, and then some of the action items that we can take. And then just to twist things up a little bit, we're also going to talk about some of the martyred scholars from the different parts of the world. And then we're going to have a closing remark by Sheikh Salim Yusufali, inshallah. Now, as far as the purpose of the Quds Day is concerned, I'm going to play a video here so we all know why we're here to begin with. And this is a video of Imam Khomeini.
روز قدس روزی است که باید تمام ملت‌های اسلام با هم توجه بکنند و این روز را زنده نگه دارند. اگر یک هیاهویی از تمام ملت‌های مسلمین بلند بشد روز جمعه آخر ماه مبارک که روز قدس است، همه ملت‌ها قیام بکنند، همون که حالا همون تظاهرات، همون راهپیمایی ها را بکنن، این مقدمه میشد از برای اینکه انشاءالله جلوی این مفسدین را ما بگیریم و کلک اینها از بلاد اسلام کنده بشه. و شما مطمئن باشید که اگر سوس بگیرید اینها تا فرات میخوان برند. اینها همه اینجا را ملک خودشون میگن هست. شما باید محکم بایستید در مقابل اینها و اگر چنانچه مسلمین ملت‌های مسلم بایستند در مقابل اینها و اگر دولت‌هاشون بخوان مخالفت کنن مشت تو دهنشون بزنن چنان که ایران مشت در دهن محمد رضا زد. محمد رضا از همه دولت‌های که مسلمین از همه اونها قوی تر بود و از همه اونها پشتوانش بیشتر بود. معذالک ملت ما قیام کرد و اسلام را وجهه نظر خودش قرار داد و الله اکبر را فریاد کشید و این قدرت را از بین برد و قدرت‌های دیگر را هم و تا آخر هم همه قدرت‌ها اگر روی هم باشند نمیتونند آسیب به یک همچین ملتی برسانند.
So as you can see, Imam said the purpose of Al-Quds Day is to rise and stand firm against the oppressors. And it's a united and a collective effort. It's not something that we necessarily do in closed doors like we're doing here today. But inshallah tonight is an exception here. You know, some people are standing, drinking chai and having nice socializing time, and others are coming in and out. It's fine, inshallah. You know, the purpose of this particular one is to raise more awareness. But the whole purpose of Quds Day is to stand up against oppressors, united, and it should be a collective effort. You know, and as you can see in these pictures here, you have people in India, you have people in Pakistan, Yemen, Iran, obviously, Lebanon, Syria, and all different parts of the world that are standing united with each other so that they can condemn the oppressors. And that's the whole purpose of the Quds Day here. So I just want to quickly talk about some of the things that took place in Palestine in the last few years while all the Muslim countries were sleeping. While, mashallah, you have countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, and all these other countries that are just literally sleeping who claim to be Muslim countries. Let's see what's happened in Palestine in the last 5 years. In 2017, we have Trump, who recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital, and he ordered the embassy to be moved. So this is a huge shock that took place in 2017. And nobody had ever imagined that this would take place. It all goes back to what Imam was saying. If you read the video, he said that Shah was the most powerful man in the Middle East, if not the world, one of the most powerful figures in the world. And because the Muslims were united against Shah collectively, they were able to remove him from his power. It comes from the people. It doesn't matter how strong, how amazing, how powerful this beast is. If people are willing to get together, unite, and stand up against this beast, then obviously Allah is going to support the people, and as a result, that oppressor can be removed. But here, unfortunately, the Muslim countries were asleep. And what happened as a result? Well, in 2017, Trump recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And then you have dozens of Palestinians that were killed in the 2018 protests, the protests that took place in 2018 because people were fed up with what was happening in Gaza and West Bank. Now imagine we come here, we take this place for granted. We come here on Friday for Jummah. We come here on Thursday night for programs. We've been coming here every night for Ramadan programs. We come up here and we're happy. We chatter with our friends here. We eat the spicy and non-spicy food. All while our brothers and sisters in Palestine are suffering every single day. They go to the Jummah prayers and they don't know when they can come back, if they can even come back. And then in 2019, what happens? Well, now the US says that Israeli settlements, which every country in the world recognizes to be illegal, are no longer illegal. Yet another move, mashallah, from the US. So for those of you who aren't already aware, basically up till this point, every single country in the world considered those settlements, the illegal settlements in Israel, to be completely illegal. Not a single country in the world recognizes those territories. And here we have 2019, when Mike Pompeo announced that he's going to make these settlements legal, essentially. And what happens as a result? Well, in 2020, 600 to 750,000 Israeli settlements in total. And here's a map. I want you to look at this map over here. The green is basically yes to all the countries that think that these settlements are a violation of international law. As you can see, even the European countries don't consider this to be legal. And the US was the only country in the entire globe in 2019 to announce this bold move. And guess what? Because the European countries are all puppets of the US, all the European countries as well as Australia, all puppets. And obviously some of the, mashallah, Muslim countries as well. What's going to happen next? Well, slowly you're going to start seeing a trickle effect. Right now you only see one country here that recognizes this to be legal, and slowly you're going to start seeing more and more orange. And in 2020, 140 checkpoints. Can you imagine 140 checkpoints? They shrank Palestine so small that it looks like a little bean at this point. And then you have 1.5 million people that are living in the refugee camps. 1.5 million people living in refugee camps. And these camps aren't all luxurious, and I don't even know how to describe these camps. And I was thinking maybe I should show this to you guys, maybe I shouldn't, but out of respect, I'm not going to show this. Just imagine what people are going through in these camps. And what happened in 2021? After the Sheikh Jarrah incident, more than 300 Palestinians just last year were killed, and more than 2,000 Palestinians injured. And I didn't even know this, but apparently there was a testing lab, COVID testing lab, that was there in Gaza. The only COVID testing lab. It got completely wrecked by Israel. Completely annihilated. The only COVID lab. And here we are, mashallah, some of the people thinking of Joe Biden as the Jesus Christ here to save mankind from oppression. But guess what? Joe Biden is not going to solve anything. If there's one lesson that Muslims and non-Muslims around the world can learn from what is happening in Ukraine, it is that the people that are proclaiming to be saviors, like this guy over here, they're not saviors. Look what NATO did to Ukraine. President Zelensky of Ukraine, he kept begging and begging. Oh, please let us be part of the EU. Let us be part of the NATO. We'll be your friends. We'll do everything. We'll bark like dogs. Whatever you do, whatever you tell us to do, we'll do it. And what happened at the end? The Europeans don't even want them to be part of them. They sacrificed their entire country. They let Russia come and invade them, massacre them. And by the way, nobody here is condoning what Russia is doing either. I'm not sitting here and saying what Russia is doing is good. But let's face the facts. Russia comes, bombards the entire country, and here Zelensky is, oh, we'll join NATO, we'll join EU, we'll do whatever you can. And what happens at the end? Well, neither the US is supporting truly, neither the Europeans are supporting Ukraine truly, nobody's supporting Ukraine. And this is a lesson that we should all learn, is that those who proclaim to be peacekeepers, those who proclaim to be justice fighters, they're the first people that will abandon you when you truly need help. And here's Mr. Joe Biden, that unfortunately a lot of Muslims in this community and around the globe think that he is somewhat of a savior. Look what he's saying about Israel.
If I were a Jew, I'd be a Zionist. I am a Zionist. You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist.
U.S. President Joe Biden has been a long-standing supporter of Israel. In fact, one of his first trips overseas as a senator was to Israel back in 1973.
My first meeting in Israel was invited by a woman named Golda Meir, who I admired from afar, as millions of Americans did. But my education started, as some of you know, at my father's dinner table. It was at that table I first heard the phrase that is overused sometimes today, but in a sense not used meaningfully enough. First, I heard the phrase, never again. It was at that table that I learned that the only way to ensure that could never happen again was the establishment and existence of a secure Jewish state of Israel.
Biden continued to voice his support for Israel at every opportunity. He even opposed arms sales to Saudi Arabia back in 1986 because he believed Saudi Arabia posed a major threat to Israel.
If we look at the Middle East, I think it's about time we stop, those of us who support, as most of us do, Israel in this body, for apologizing for our support for Israel. There's no apology to be made. None. It is the best $3 billion investment we make. Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region.
Throughout his political career, Biden has also been vocal about his support of U.S. arms sales to Israel. This is from Biden's election campaign website, which shows a full list of his support shown to Israel over the years. There have been rare times when Biden has voiced his opposition to Israel's plans to annex Palestinian land. Most recently, during his presidential campaign in 2020, Biden said that he would reverse some of Donald Trump's policies that led to Israeli plans to annex parts of the West Bank, saying he did not support annexation. But then there's also a long track of Biden's unwavering support for illegal Israeli activity in the region. It's been reported that Biden once said he would go even further than Israel, adding that he'd forcefully fend off anyone who sought to invade his country, even if that meant killing women or children. These comments were made after Israel's 1982 invasion of Lebanon, where around 18,000 people were killed. Considering Biden's historic stance on Israel, will his politics really differ from Trump when it comes to settlements and other human rights violations?
My name's Joe Biden. And everybody knows I love Israel.
The best $3 billion investment. We're not talking about Build Back Better. We're not talking about supporting healthcare. We're not talking about education, infrastructure, building highways, and all kinds of different infrastructure that America deserves. We're talking about the best investment that we can possibly ever make. Let's give $3 billion to Israel. And some people, some of the people, Muslims, unfortunately, they say, oh no, he's different. He has to say this to gain Israel's support, but once he gets in power, yada, yada, yada. Well, they said the same thing about Obama and what happened in Obama's time. And what happened? Okay, well, no, it's not in his power, blah, blah, blah. Okay, if it's not in his power, then why are you so adamant in supporting him? Why are you so much in support of this man that you yourself are saying cannot even save the Palestinians, much less than... So this is the reality that we live in, is that, in the last 5 years, we've seen what's happening in Palestine. From allowing the capital of Israel to be changed to Jerusalem, to recognizing these illegal settlements as something that is legal, and committing all kinds of atrocities. And unfortunately, Muslims are asleep here. So what can we do? Here in the West, we're here, we have our work, we gotta pay our monthly paycheck. We gotta take our monthly paycheck and pay to our mortgage or rent. What can we do with our little capacity? Well, there's a few things that we can do, and inshallah, our Sheikh, our beloved Sheikh Salim will talk about the action items or whatever else that we can do, inshallah, to at least be part of this movement to fight up against, to go up against oppression. But one thing we can do is to create more awareness in our communities. We spend a lot of time in social media just sharing random videos. But inshallah, if we can ever share some valid, interesting videos to people, if we can talk about this in our dinner tables with our family and our friends, that's the least we can do. Boycott known Israeli products. We don't necessarily have to boycott all the companies in S&P 500. I'm not sitting here and saying boycott Starbucks, boycott McDonald's, boycott Coke, and all these different brands, because a lot of these brands are actually made here in the U.S. And it's virtually impossible to boycott all these products. But at least the products that are known to be made by Israel. For example, we've heard of Wix, we've heard of a lot of like Viper, or I heard Sabra, for example, the hummus brand, Sabra. That's also an Israeli brand. The hummus is actually made in Israel, if you guys aren't aware of. And there's all kinds of such products that you can find easy alternatives to that we can boycott. But that's one small step we can take to fight up against oppression. We can call our Congress to stop funding of weapons to Israel. Surprisingly, a lot of people don't know this, but you can actually call your local congressman and tell them to stop funding weapons to Israel. And yes, you might think that me as a one person, I'm not able to make any change in the world, but you'd be surprised how much change we can actually do. And then finally, last but not least, we can do dua for them. And we can do dua for those who are actively supporting the Palestinian cause. Right now, we have a country that is supporting the Palestinian, the only Shia country, the only Muslim country in the world that is supporting the Palestinian cause. So we make dua for the Palestinians at the same time. We make dua for our brothers and sisters who are out there actively fighting for the rights of the Palestinians. We can make dua for them as well. And now what I want to do is turn our tables a little bit and switch to a different conversation. I know that I'm preaching to the choir here. MashaAllah, everybody here already knows that Zionism is bad, Palestine is good. So I'm just going to kind of switch my topic a little bit and talk about the different shuhada that we have in different countries. So we have a verse of Quran that says, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. Never think of those martyred in the cause of Allah as dead. In fact, they are alive with their Lord, well provided for. And we have a hadith from the Prophet who says that the ink of a scholar is holier than the blood of the martyr. So what I want to do now is to kind of change topics and mix the two. In one hand, you have the status of the Shaheed, and then on the other hand, we have the importance of our scholars. So what better than to talk about some of the scholars that we've had that have become Shaheed. So starting with Shaheed Baqir Sadr and also Shaheeda Bintul Huda in Iraq. Shaheed Baqir Sadr is known for his tremendous books. Many of his books are very popular, and a little known fact is that he wrote a lot of his famous books when he was in his 20s, believe it or not. And two of the famous books that I myself, I'm going to tell everybody here to read because they're translated in English, is Our Economics and Our Philosophy. A lot of people complain about how we don't have materials about economics. We need to have more books about economics. Well, there's this one really good book called Our Economics, Iqtisaduna, by Shaheed Sadr, and also Our Philosophy, Falsafatuna. And here's a small little clip that I want to play, so we can hear a voice of this Shaheed here.
ربنا فقهنا في كتابك واكشف عن قلوبنا ظلمات الذنوب لكي نتفهم آيات وأزح عن بصائرنا غشاوة الدنيا وبريق الكاذب لكي نملأ نفوسنا بهداك واجعلنا من حملة قرآنك وسنة نبيك والسائرين على طريق طاعتك. ربنا أتمم لنا نورنا واغفر لنا إنك على كل شيء قدير. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا. ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به. واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين ربنا اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم.
And this is Shaheeda Bintul Huda. She's the sister of Shaheed Baqir Sadr, who also, like him, became Shaheed. And she started in Islamic schools in Iraq, and she was very active in the community in the sister side, and inshallah we pray to Allah that we take her also as a role model for our sisters. And then here we have in Iran, obviously there's a lot of shuhada in Iran, but I want to play a little clip of Shaheed Mutahhari here, just to make this program a little more spiritual and inshallah more meaningful.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
افرادی که شما میبینید در دنیا ساده زندگی میکنن بدون اینکه لذت‌های خدا را بر خودشون حرام کرده باشن و فکر بکنن اینها حرام است ابدا و بدون اینکه از کارهای زندگی دست بکشن در متن زندگی واقع هستن ولی دلشون میخواد در دنیا ساده زندگی بکنن دلش میخواد این لباس که میپوشد اون ساده ترین لباس را در عمرش بپوشد دلش میخواد خوراکش ساده ترین خوراک ها باشه در دنیا دلش میخواد مسکنش ساده ترین مسکن ها باشه در دنیا دلش میخواد مرکبش ساده ترین مرکب ها باشه در دنیا چرا؟ میگه آقا من آزادیم را به چیزی نمیخوام بپوشم نمیخوام آزادی بپوشم به هر اندازه که خودم را به اشیاء مقید بکنم اسیر این اشیاء هستم.
You can read his books in alislam.org. He has amazing book for youths, and I highly recommend for those of us that have youths to make sure that we show them these books. And then we have Shaheed Musa Sadr of Lebanon. He was very tremendously involved in Lebanon as well as Syria, and unfortunately under the hands of Gaddafi, he most likely passed away in Libya. And then taking us to India, we have Shaheed Nurullah Shustari, who was an author of a very famous book, Ihqaq al-Haq. And then in Afghanistan, we have many shuhada as well, but one of the shaheed was Shaheed Balkhi. He stood up against the oppressive government of Afghanistan back in the days. Fun fact is that his grandson, Ismail Balkhi, actually comes here in Fatimiyya Center. And his mother was very involved in Fatimiyya Center as well. And obviously, we all know him, Shaheed Arif Hussaini of Pakistan, who was the leader of all the Shias in Pakistan. And then more recently, Shaheed Al-Nimr, who was killed by the quote-unquote Saudi government of Hijaz. And then we also have Shaheed Hassan Shehata of Egypt, who was killed by the extremist Salafists. Let's recite a Surah Fatiha for all the shuhada that I just mentioned, as well as all the shuhada in the globe that have passed away in the past, that are passing away now, and everybody inshallah. Bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Okay, so before I ask Sheikh Salim to come up here and give his final remark, what I want to do is I want to ask the audience here to talk about, to briefly talk about an experience about a shaheed that they know of in their personal life. It could be a shaheed in your family, or it could be someone that you admire, one of your favorite shuhada, and something that you can take away from that person. So I mentioned some of these shaheed. I mentioned about Shaheed Baqir Sadr, who wrote amazing books, and how I personally connect with him, because not only was he a great martyr, but also he was a very intellectual person. So I'm gonna ask some brave people to volunteer and talk about their favorite Shaheed. It could be Shaheed they personally know from their family, long distance family. I know we have a lot of Iranian brothers here who might be able to talk about some of the Shuhada in their family or their family friends, or any other Shaheed for that matter. Just a few volunteers, inshallah, and then we're going to have a conclusion with Sheikh Salim. Any volunteers, please raise your hand, or else I'm going to just randomly pick someone to talk about their favorite Shaheed. Also, the sister's side as well, please. Okay, I'm going to at least ask 2 people to volunteer. Otherwise, we're not going to have a productive program. Okay, Brother Hissam, it looks like you're very interested to talk about it. So, Brother Hissam, come up here and tell me your favorite Shaheed and why you personally can connect with this Shaheed and why you like this Shaheed. Bismillah.
Oh, you caught me. So it's really hard to choose between all the martyrs that we had and all the Shuhada. And even if you want to, that's okay. It is really difficult. Truly is a difficult question. But again, I guess in our life, we had one individual specifically who had a big impact, and we could really feel that. Prior to his presence, we were just reading about Shuhada and their life and their lifestyle. Whereas this specific Shaheed, we have like seen his presence within our life and his track record across the country and the region. And unfortunately, we have seen that the US government couldn't really resist his presence, and then they've assassinated him with his companion. So definitely looking into these individuals and understanding their mission and their alignment with the pretty much with the leadership and without asking questions, just following the footsteps. That's something that I can, take it as a, yeah.
Thank you very much, Brother Hissam. We have Maulana Wahidi here as well. Oh, you want to? Sure.
I think the one of the biggest Shaheed of. I'm loud enough. I think one of the biggest Shaheed that I admire is Haj Qasim Soleimani. And all the people of Hajj Shabi who basically saved Shia shrines in Iraq. They did a tremendous job. And they basically foiled their designs where we are, these shaitans.
Maulana Wahidi is here. I'm going to ask Maulana Wahidi, what is his favorite Shaheed from Afghanistan? Just very briefly talk about, one of the Shaheed that none of us have heard of before, if you can, please. There's many, many Shuhada in Afghanistan.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. If you would ask me your favorite Shaheed in general, not from Afghanistan, that would be much easier. So I would say Imam Hussein alayhi salam is my favorite Shaheed. Yeah. From Afghanistan, obviously there's millions of Shaheed. There are two of them are my favorites. One of them is my uncle. And then the other one is Shaheed Mazari. He was in the time of that they were oppressing Shias, and especially the Hazara people that I'm sure you're watching the news, you're following that they are doing the ethnic cleansing now. They're killing Shias, bombing. Like yesterday, they bombed another masjid. He stood up against oppression. He became the voice of Shias at that time. Now even we have now some Shia people who are don't agree with some of his politics, but in general, he basically gave the Shia a huge image in the country, and now before the Taliban, every single government of Afghanistan, the second vice president of the government was a Shia, and remember that time the Hazaras and the Shias used to be known as the workers and very uneducated people, second or even third class citizen of Afghanistan. But he stood up against oppression. He educated people, and alhamdulillah, now Shia people in Afghanistan are very educated, very. That's why they're scared. That's why they keep killing the Shias and bombing the schools. And yeah, these are my top 2 Shia favorite Shaheed.
And now I'm going to ask one of the sisters to be courageous enough to talk about your favorite Shaheed or Shaahida that you personally admire. So if I can please get a brave volunteer from the sister, and then inshallah we're going to conclude with Sheikh Salim's conclusion, inshallah. All right, I'm going to give a few seconds to decide if someone can be courageous enough. So who is courageous enough to talk about their favorite Shaahida or Shaheed that you admire in your day-to-day life? Nobody. So sisters here, no sister here admires any Shaahida or Shaheed? Okay, it looks like there's no volunteers from the sister side. Okay, we have one more volunteer from the brother side.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. So my admirer is Musa Sadr from Lebanon. He was the driving force for the whole Shia community in that place. And when he came to Lebanon was almost like in shackles and almost like ruined. And he gave life to Lebanon. And from there he created a mall, and then he went on up, and then he brought unity among all the sects. For the first time, there was unity in Lebanon after his inception there, after the organization inception there. And then he became so powerful. Then he went to Libya in 1978, I guess, as far as I could remember. And then he thought, because Gaddafi was a very rich man, he had at that time billions of dollars, he thought he can make use of Gaddafi. And Gaddafi at that time was very much supporter of US. And also, of course, I don't want to mention other countries. So he went down to Lebanon. After that, never returned. But after that, Lebanon became strong, and they followed his model. And today, he's my favorite, and that's all I wanted to say.
Jazakallah. Okay, inshallah, we're going to conclude the program. Sheikh Salim is going to come up and give a brief conclusion, inshallah, so that he can enlighten us. Bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, Brother Ishraq, for that touching and enlightening presentation. And Jazakumullah khairan to all of the brothers and sisters, our respected scholar, and all our elders and children who were patient and participated in this program. Your presence here shows that you care, and inshallah, you'll be rewarded for your care and concern, and for your solidarity, and for your standing for this cause. Sometimes people, unfortunately, they think of these negative political events kind of like the weather. When the weather is like, let's say there's a bad storm, what do? We just wait and we weather it out, and eventually the storm goes away, the sun comes out, and then we're like, okay, back to normal again. Right? Sometimes we might have to wait for a week, but eventually we know that the storm is going to pass. What is going to make the storm pass when it comes to the oppression of the Palestinians? And what will solve this disease, which is otherwise known as Zionism? The only solution is in the hands of the people themselves. The only solution is in the hands of the people themselves. Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, وَلَوْ يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ لَانْتَصَرَ مِنْهُمْ وَلَكِنْ لِيَبْلُوَ بَعْضَهُمْ بِبَعْضٍ. Allah, if He wanted to, He could grant victory to the oppressed, just like that. Kun fayakun, it's done. But he wants to test people by means of people. Meaning that victory is granted through people to people. Victory is granted to those who strive. Victory is granted to the true believers who persevere. So we know that victory is for the oppressed, but when it will come depends on what the people do. Sometimes people have this imagination that we just have to sit back and sit tight, and eventually the imam, like if you go to the websites of the boycott, divest sanctions, the people who are running those websites, they talk to the Palestinians who are being oppressed, and they say that which company is the biggest oppressor. So that's when you get the names like Sabra and Caterpillar and HP. Starbucks, again, you have to look at what's up to date. Some of these things are from decades ago. So make sure you find out what's up to date and you go for those companies. Otherwise, we're wasting our time. If we go after every company, then we're not going to be able to do it. Targeted boycotts. Also, the income that we earn, sometimes through our careers that we choose, sometimes the companies we work for, we're part and parcel of this oppression. So for the young people here in the audience, think about this, that how can you choose a path in your life where you're part of the cause or helping, not the cause that's actually harming and supporting the oppressors? Your choices that you can make. And final what I mentioned is, brothers and sisters, you saw recently what happens when countries want to support Ukraine. Even when you go and check out at the grocery, they ask you if you want to donate money to Ukraine. Right? Even in every website transaction you make, they ask you if you want to support Ukraine. So when the powers that be want you to support a certain cause, there's certain things the buttons that they press, there's certain things that they do, and suddenly they find that everyone supports something without even really knowing what's going on. What that shows us is there's a lot of power out there in terms of changing people's public perception. And people naturally gravitate towards truth, towards justice. So it's our collective responsibility to do what we need to do to bring light to the oppression and to be part of the cause of helping the oppressed. Inshallah, by the barakah of this month of Ramadan and this fasting, we're now able to see beyond ourselves and our own needs and look at the needs of the entire ummah. And by praying for the dhuhur of the Imam ﷺ, we can realize that we're part of that as well too. We have our responsibilities towards our brothers and sisters who are oppressed around the world. Your presence here, it's very heartening, alhamdulillah. It shows that your care and your concern. Inshallah, some of you can step up and take on initiatives so that we as a community can move forward in this regard. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi at-tahirin.